the sheriff at that point in time. It was a David Noel. Was it? Who was the other guy?
Dan Nolly.
Dan Nolly. Dan Nolly was the sheriff that actually initiated this whole piece on the Wapato piece and his justification or whatever. But the guy who basically took the blunt of it all in terms of actually working during that particular time after Dan was a gentleman by the name of Bernie Gusto. He was a sheriff at that point in time, and he's here with us today.
I'm glad to be here, Bruce. Thank you.
Good enough.
Thank you for having
then
me.
I've got the other two colleagues. You've seen these guys before.
Oh, yep.
They were here with me before. We got the Neighborhood Association. We got Neighborhood Association right here, and then we got Patrick right here. You looking at future staff receive, and then when we start rolling.
For city.
If we run for office.
Yeah, city gas.
We got to get some horsepower. Get some horsepower.
That's right.
No problem.
Yeah.
Well, with that, what we're going to do is that, Bernie, I think we got a little clip of a special that Steve Dean's going to be doing next week, and we encourage you to watch it.
Okay.
Because, again, that's some more background, if you will, on the whole issue
Great.
we have here in Portland, Portland area. And he did a pretty good discussion. So I would recommend very strongly that you look at the commercial, but it's Tuesday on Channel 2 at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. So check it out, okay? Good. But I think we have a small clip as sort of an introduction. Steve is basically talking to the two reporters from Channel 2 who were responsible in putting that piece together on homelessness in Portland, Oregon. They throw out a few ideas and whatever, but Tuesday you get the whole comprehensive piece, okay? I think we got that piece now. Let's go on and shoot it.
And with me now, K2's morning news anchors Angelica Thornton and Brian Wood, who've spent 5 months working on this documentary. Thank you both for coming on the program.
Great to be here, Steve.
Purpose of the documentary on homelessness to better understand the issue and look at possible solutions. Would you say mission accomplished? If so, what'd you guys learn?
We learned that it is really complicated. I mean, it's not black and white. And I think when you talk to people who live not just in Portland, communities all over the Northwest, they have an opinion because they're frustrated and they're angry. And when you try and break down the problem with them, it's really hard to talk to people about it because there is another side. It's also something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, even people who are in the business of helping the homeless. We had a really tough time getting a lot of social service agencies to talk with us. Our sister station in Seattle did a documentary called Seattle is Dying. So I think a lot of people were afraid because they thought that that's what we were doing. That's not what we're doing. We have our own story to tell. So it took a lot to get people in the business of solving this crisis to talk to us about it because it is so complicated, it is so emotional, it's hard to talk about.
And so many people, so many agencies are involved in this. It's kind of hard to figure out where to start and who does what for whom. I think one of the biggest frustrations that we saw was that a lot of people tend to objectify the homeless. They're that person who's drunk, sleeping in a tent. Boy, that is just a tiny fraction of this growing problem in our community.
How much did you two know about homelessness before you started working on this documentary, Brian?
I think we knew what news people do know in this town. We do stories on homelessness all the time, but again, going back to what I said a bit earlier, what Angelica said was, sure, we see the problems, the crimes that may occur with the street homeless, but again, that's just a small fraction of the problem here. There are a lot of people who are there for reasons that really they had no control over. People who essentially retired and then couldn't afford to live anymore because the housing prices went up so much.
Biggest misconception about homelessness in Portland, what'd you find, Angelica?
That it is just the guy on the corner living in a tent holding a sign asking you for change. And that it's their choice to be here and that they got a bus ticket in Florida because some city sent them to Portland. You saw a little bit of, on that in Brian's piece. That's really not reality. In Portland or any other cities in the Northwest struggling with the homeless crisis. And they're not all mentally ill and they're not all addicted to drugs. There is a huge segment of the homeless population or people who are on the brink of homelessness who thought they did everything right. And just bad circumstances, the economy, bad luck, leaves them in this really difficult position.
All the research that you folks have done and the producers have done on this, biggest obstacles to reducing homelessness in Portland? What do you think it is, Brian?
I think part of it is what we're trying to accomplish with this documentary. It's education, helping people understand the breadth of the problem and taking a look at some of the solutions, because there are a lot of them out there that are working and some of them that aren't working so well.
You look at some of the solutions. Let's talk about them. What is working?
You know, we need more money and we need more housing, and that is slowly happening. And I think one thing that county, city, state governments, and the federal government realizes after decades of sort of letting the problem go is that they're not going to find the solution unless they work together. So the city of Portland and Multnomah County and the state of Oregon and the federal government finally realized we need to collaborate like we used to, otherwise this problem is never going to be solved. We can't just give someone a cot and a cup of soup and send them back out onto the street in the morning. We all have to work together to make sure they don't have to come back here.
We want to show the viewers a clip from the documentary. Angelica, can you set this up for
Yeah,
us?
this is Chuck and Vicky, and this is an example of what Brian was just talking about. These are people who thought they did everything right in their life. They worked for decades, they saved for their retirement, and then they ended up out on the street because of bad circumstances.
Let's watch this.
You both get Social Security, and
Just don't seem to be enough. Yeah,
you make only $2,000 a month, and it's not enough.
yeah. They've got the rent jacked up so high that
And finding a one bedroom, you know, there's 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, but they cost too much. So we need a one
so
bedroom.
you guys together make about $2,000 a month.
yeah,
You still can't afford to have it.
yeah.
Right.
Because you get the
Well, we
cost
can't
of
find
getting
anything.
into a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You stop and think about what it costs to get into a place nowadays. You're talking first, last, deposit, whatever. You know, all that adds up.
They had some bad luck that could happen to any of us. He worked for 40 years as a truck mechanic, and she worked for Janssen making bathing suits for 20 years. They don't have any addiction issues, and they ended up, and you'll see in the documentary how they ended up there and how difficult it's been for them to get out of their SUV where they live now.
I was struck by that too. I was watching it yesterday with Nate Baker, who was holding
heard his
the
voice,
microphone,
yeah.
heard his voice. That really could be anybody.
It could be
Right.
any of us.
Absolutely anybody.
100,000. That's the number that we heard while doing our research, that there are about 100,000 people in our community who are right on the edge.
What
Right
will
on the
people walk away with? Any sort of hope as we watch this after watching the documentary?
Solutions aren't easy. Chief Outlaw, we talked for a long time with Police Bureau Chief Danielle Outlaw. She says we can't arrest our way out of this. And then I also hope that they understand the tens of thousands of people who are right on the edge.
Yeah, and I think that, I hope they understand that it is not simple, and that I think everyone is on the same page. It's just a matter of getting them to move in the right direction, on the same path.
We asked the question, is this the best we can do? The title of the documentary. Does that question get answered, do you two feel?
Yes, and I think you'll be surprised by how some of the leaders, the power leaders in our community answered that question and how seemingly upfront we were, but you're going to have to watch.
Yeah, that surprised us.
I'll tell you, I absolutely enjoyed all your pieces. Looking forward to the documentary.
Steve.
Great to see you guys.
Steve.
We're going to find out the answer this Tuesday during our 6 p.m. news. We hope everyone will watch. Is this the best we can do? Thank you for sharing your insight on the homelessness with our viewers, and just seeing you guys every once in a while because we work different shifts.
Ships passing in the night.
It is. Thank you very much.
Your voice, your vote. What's being done to house the homeless?
Well, there you go. Steve did quite a job there. Again, I'd encourage you to look at that. Channel 2's doing that piece. No, stay where you are because for the camera. Sorry about that. Just get close to the deal. Yeah. This is community television, so we can make mistakes.
That's correct.
There's no such thing as a mistake.
I'm good at that part.
You're saying here. Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to probably discuss a little bit more of this later on in the show. But again, as I indicated before, we've got Bernie here today, a former sheriff, of Wapato, and that is an issue. And so I thought it was great. It was a great find him coming on and spending some time with us. We want to thank you very much, Bernie.
Thanks for asking
Okay,
me. I
fine.
appreciate that.
So why don't we just jump right on in there?
So let's talk a little bit about the history of policing and corrections in the state. And I grew up with the Oregon State Police, 22 years working the street, taking people to local jails, people that went on to prison and that kind of thing. Then spent 6 or 7 years with Gresham Police as their chief, and then Multnomah County Sheriff. So on my way to becoming the Multnomah County Sheriff, and while I was chief in Gresham, voters in Multnomah County passed a $48 million approximately levy to build Wapato. And it was sold as part of Books and Crooks. So it ran with the library levy. So if you came to vote for the library levy,
like that,
Books and Crooks, and if you voted for the library levy, most likely you came to, and the turnout was good because of the libraries, and people voted yes on that with the promise that there was a jail population, and let me say that in a positive way, a jail population that with more beds we could intervene in people's lives and make them better earlier than having early release all the time and people going back to the community and committing crimes. So That jail was started construct. That was in 1996. Jail started construction just around the year 2001, something like that. No, it actually was 2002. I came to be sheriff in 2003, and when I arrived, we were just barely underway there and had a footprint at Wapato. And I'll remind you that the community was a very difficult thing siting Wapato, where it was going to be. In fact, it was turned down in many places around the county. And finally, at Wapato, off Marine Drive, Terminal 6, near Terminal 6, the community decided they would support it with some certain conditions. And I think the conditions they asked for was that the facility become part of the community in terms of solving the community's problems, as well as just a place to detain people. And I think that's what's been forgotten, is that was never sold as a block them up and forget them there. The community wanted to be involved in there. In fact, they were involved in the design. They were involved in how the levy was passed and what it was going to be used for. And in fact, because of them, Wapato was built to, at the end, when we were ready to use it in 2004, it was a place for 500 beds with a footprint for 2,000 beds, already paid for. A power plant, an HVAC plant, and a kitchen that would serve 2,000 people there, and all we really needed was just a little bit more money to finish that 2,000 beds. Now, I'll tell you that it was. The community stayed in touch through the whole thing. Believe me, I heard.
So it wasn't a jail. It wasn't a jail.
It was. No.
It was. My point is that it was as they indicate, a detention center.
It was a detention center, right?
A detention center. That's a little different than it's hardcore. Because a lot of times people, mindset wise.
Yeah. So the correction system in the state of Oregon is a three-tiered system when it comes to local government. It's a maximum security system, which the jail downtown. Then medium security, and remember we used to have a number of medium securities. That was Wapato was a medium security. But what went away was the minimum security we had at the farm. We had it at the release center downtown Portland, where people actually came there, served their time, and then went out in the community and worked and came back. They got their GEDs there. But we've given up all of that in this community. Why we have a homeless problem in this, and we'll talk about later, is because the people who needed our help, we abandoned. So what we did was we kept cutting beds, which Wapato was supposed to help with at one time. And so the population jail is now so hard and so mentally ill that there's no place to put anybody that's has a chance. So if you come in, you're going to matrix, meaning you're going to be released right out of jail on a Friday night. The minute you get there, you're going to be out because you can't qualify to get a bed because you're not bad enough and you're not mentally ill enough. And those kind of things was a shame. Wapato, let me tell you about Wapato. It was meant to be a money saver for the county. Then when it was built for a 100-year life, and it was the floors in the Wapato were polished concrete. There was actually, we could do kidney dialysis in Wapato. No longer, we had a full service health facility there that we could do kidney dialysis in the facility, so that we wouldn't have to transport any longer and cost the county a bunch of money. We were prepared to serve everybody there the way they should be, and work on work release again from there. But all that's been lost in this conversation about where it should be. And really, here's what should happen in this county in terms of the structure. The jail at Inverness should be closed. Wapato should be open. Inverness should become a center for the homeless. And I will tell you, I'll talk more about that. And I'll tell you why that is and why it works better than Wapato does for the homeless. This is very poor leadership, very poor, and no business heads on that county commission, apparently not in the sheriff's office either. Because here's what should happen. That should happen. Wapato should be open. We'd have 2 jails on the I-5 corridor, and then we'd have centralized place for services like public transportation at Inverness, which is on 122nd. You understand? You see, this is just very poor everything. And while we're struggling for this, you know, the reason that people are homeless are a wide variety. Some of them start in the criminal justice system. Some of them don't. Some of them start on the whole street and then become the criminal justice system problem over time. So. I'm going to tell you again that, you know, we were just discussing just a minute ago that it's time at Wapato for a prayer service, like somebody like Kanye West, who's not just identified himself as a community-based Christian, somebody who believes that somehow we can do better if we pray better, if we think better about our communities, and we need him here. We need him to come out here and rally the troops around.
We'll work on that.
Wait. Hold on a second. Hold on, folks. Did I just hear? Because I'm a millennial, I'm a young guy. I love what you just said, Bernie. Did I just hear somebody who was a sheriff and a police chief And you used to lock people up, and now you're saying let's work with people like Kanye who are on prison reform and who are now. Well, today Kanye's at on TMZ. Apparently, Joel Osteen has welcomed him to come to the mega church in Houston. Bruce, you're from Houston.
Oh yes, I
don't know.
I know about Joe.
All these little
I know the church.
synchronicities here
I know
seem to
the
make
church.
sense. Good point about the lack of leadership, Bernie, because I know a lot of these people. I work with a lot of them. I'm a young guy, but I've worked in politics, and it's a total lack of leadership. I find myself at 27 years old, thinking about all these different ways of how we can come together and work on intricate ideas for the future, and I'm finding myself, hearing great ideas from people like, everybody at the table, and then I look to the leadership, and there's none. And I want to make a point about Kanye and leadership. Why is it that a guy who, again, I love Kanye now. I had a weird feeling about him before. I thought he was maybe a little brash, maybe a little arrogant. But I love him now because I've worked on prison reform for many years in a legislator. And I had to admit to myself that, well, Kim Kardashian is a celebrity, and, some people, even myself, used to think she was kind of ditzy. But man, did I have to humble myself, Bernie, because I looked at, why is the most progressive legislator in America, the Oregon legislator, why are they having trouble working to get real comprehensive prison reform solutions? What about no disrespect, but under the Obama Congress, they had ample opportunities to get prison reform done. So when I heard a lot of my Democrat friends laughing at Kanye West and Kim Kardashian and just throwing stones when he was, talking about prison reform, I said, no, hold on a second. I got to humble myself, and we all should. Because what does it say about us, the leaders, the people who are, in these ivory towers and whatnot? What does it say about us that people like Kanye, and shout out to Kim, what does it say about us that they're getting more done than the people who should know about this?
Awesome.
So, I don't know. I think it's a great point. This could be a wonderful facility to show the world, let's make amends for maybe mass incarceration by fixing the homeless problem on the back end. Like you said, we let these people down in one way or another, but, we got to come together with big solutions. And it's really unfortunate that the leaders here are just willfully dropping the ball.
Thanks, Patrick. Good point.
No, that's
good
great.
injection.
Great.
Good injection.
This is where we need to go with young leadership.
That's why he's at the
and
table. That's why he's sitting at the table with
But I want to see this kind of guy grab hold and take hold. I think the misconception about law enforcement. I grew up in a very conservative law enforcement agency, the Oregon State Police. Now, very professional organization, and our belief about serving the public was, polite, firm. A fair law enforcement, so and did so looking like $1 million every day as we hit the street. But the fact of the matter is that as I grew through my law enforcement career, I realized that law enforcement was this much of the community, not this much of the community. We had one piece of it, and our job was not to act as if we knew all the answers, but was to listen to the answers and see if we could facilitate that. And as I grew into leadership roles in law enforcement, all the way from the Gresham City Council to being the chief to the sheriff, the fact of the matter was I could see my responsibility was no longer to believe I could fix the problems of the homeless on the street or in the jails, but if I didn't find a different way to think about them, that the problems were only going to redouble themselves, and they did. So we take somebody like President Trump, like him or not, I'm not here to pitch him one way or the other, but you take a look at what happened with his second chance look at stuff in the federal facilities, and actually we're going to see it boil down to all the state stuff as well. And that's the kind of thing that the kind of answers we need in terms of the homeless and the community that you work in. That you were part of the promise of we broke our promise to community. Forget the homeless. We broke our promise to community.
Well, every community has to defend itself now. We're on our own.
Right.
The homeless are everywhere, thanks to Mayor Hales. And, now that's what I tell everybody on Hayden Island.
You talking about Hale at the time?
Well, Hales is the one that said we need to have a homeless camp in every community, every neighborhood. And sure enough, that's what we've got now. They're not on his doorstep, down at the county. That's about all he got taken care of. But at any rate, what we do on Hayden Island is just one neighborhood out of 94. But, we actually go up and talk to all the homeless, and we encourage them to go volunteer for some help, and we'll help them get it. But they don't trust the system, or they like what they're doing. It's hard to say. There's a whole gamut right there. And but it's every neighborhood needs to step up and realize, no, we need to take care of ourselves. I'm kind of intrigued, though, with this idea of Inverness becoming the homeless center. How many beds are out there? I mean,
Well, when they're all open, there's over 1,000 beds. there,
okay,
you know.
but now it's been closed down to how many?
Well, I I don't know the exact number, but you remember that recently the sheriff fought off a 70-bed closure for a few months.
Right,
That's only a few
but
months.
it's going to happen.
But it's going to happen. So when I talk about that, it's like anything else in your home. If you have room for X amount of stuff, and you decide what it is you're going to get rid of, you're going to get rid of the worst stuff first. No. That's not how we do it here.
No.
We do it the other way around. The people with a chance, we give them no chance because we take them to jail, say goodbye to them, never see. So pretty soon the system gets hardened against the next worst, the next worst, the next most. And when I left,
That's a good analogy.
yeah, when I left Multnomah County, you know, I got to tell you, this county is blessed to have one of the best corrections staff in the nation, it doesn't, bar none. And I knew nothing about jails when I came to the county because the fact was I was a guy who dropped the person off and said goodbye as they went to the county, you know, with the state police or with Gresham, either one, didn't matter. But on the fact was that here, these are very progressive thinkers, but we have some of the most hardened mental health facilities in the country. And in fact, we get some of the most difficult medical cases and hardened cases that other counties can't handle across the nation because of the ability that we have here to do it. But now all those dorms that we used to be kind of a who goes in which mental health dorm based on how bad they are, man, it's no longer a problem. They just all jammed with the same kind of level of mental health.
Namish had already been closed when you came in.
Yes, right. Namish was already
Yeah, the mental health hospital.
that was a big loss. Now, I should tell you that what should have happened initially, and this could have been part of the mental health issue as well, and part of the homeless issue as well. When Wapato no longer had the ability to leverage any local money, we went to state corrections and asked them, says, why don't you send us your inmates? And I think you have a document there, Bruce. It talks about it from 95. You send us your inmates with a year left year left in their sentence, we will transition them back to the community here for Multnomah County, Washington County, Yamhill County, and for Clackamas County. You send them, we'll then reintroduce them to their families, to the jobs. We'll do work release out of this center. That's what should have happened here, but nobody's listening at the state, because again, it's all about building jail beds and building prison beds, and that's all it's been about. It's a shame, because we could have saved, and some of the people that we're talking about are now homeless on the streets.
Well, you're talking past tense. We're not done with Wapato. We're hoping to get private financing to go ahead and open it up.
Right.
Private financing to get it running for 1, 2, or 3 years. Because of that, if that happens, then Jordan Schnitzer is willing to donate the building. That's a huge $7 million contribution.
That's great.
Then maybe we can go to this Inverness idea where these two swap. But having gone out there and visited that center, like you said, there's a medical facility, there's an entrance where people come in, and like they have down there in Haven of Hope in San Antonio, it takes 12 people to deal with, what do they have? 300,000 people a month come down there and talk to them.
Part of it's what your point about the facility is. Right now, Wapato has 500 beds. It has a footprint for 2,000 beds, but used at the right level of corrections, the right level of offender, we need to push up a few more dorms, not a ton of money, and then shut Inverness down. We have a laundry out there that could either stay there or be moved out to Wapato. It doesn't really matter. We're talking about cents on the dollar compared to what's going on now. And then one of the objections to, if you've never been to Wapato, folks, you got to take a run out there, because it's not like a couple bus stops.
We can arrange it.
Yes.
If people want to take a tour.
We're going to do a visual piece on it too.
Sure.
But if you're a homeless person, and I'm not here to judge whether their initiatives are correct or their instincts are correct, or they should be able to choose it all. But when you take a look at going into Wapato and realizing to go to Wapato, that it is more than just showing up for the bus, because there's no bus. The bus is a mile away at the street, and there's no bus there. So public transportation is no good. And you can talk about all getting people to come in and out of the place and all that kind of thing new, because they want to live in the center of a metropolitan area where we can actually take them to jobs. See, that's 122nd and right in the middle of the heart of Portland.
Well, bus to Wapato is really not a problem, because they're going over to the St. John's, they're over in North Portland. That can be ameliorated for 2 or 3 years, whatever it takes, and then this conversion that you're talking about would
that's fine. I think that's a great way to look at it. No, that's a great way to look at it.
We just don't want to see them tear down a perfectly good building
no,
with
believe
9
me.
Yeah,
different
that's it.
sections that could be utilized for just about anything. And besides, you know, when you talk to Haven of Hope down in San Antonio, one of the things that I have their whole pro forma, it's saving them a fortune on the emergency rooms in hospitals, because instead of going there, they have the medical at Haven of Hope, and we could have the same thing at Wapato.
Yeah.
You know, as you were sharing initially about Inverness, and then Wapato, homelessness at Inverness, as opposed to Wapato aspect of it. Expand a little bit on that piece, because that's part of the solution that we're looking at.
Well, so let's first of all, let's describe jails in Multnomah County. There's only one maximum security jail in the state of Oregon, and Multnomah County Sheriff runs that jail, and that's the jail downtown. That's the jail where we have cells, so to speak, everyday cells. I don't mean necessarily cells where people are individually celled for the whole day, but that is the maximum security facility. When you go to Inverness or to Wapato, it's dorm living. It's dorm living. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole thing about classifications and that kind of thing, but so people, I'll tell you, you think the public's outraged now? If they took a tour of Wapato, they'd really be outraged, because I'm going to tell you, it's a great facility.
Still like brand new.
It's like a clubhouse. It's a clubhouse.
One has a huge yard, which, you know, you could probably get another 1,000 people off the street and let them bring their tents.
Whatever.
And you could take the motorhomes off the street because there's parking. And, you know, that's a transition.
Well, you know, one thing we tried to talk to the county again about is when they built the new pet facility. We said, why don't you build it out of Wapato? We got a ton of place. Build it out there, and we'll do pet to inmate, pet to homeless people, to walk the pets, take care of them, care for them, do those kind of things. See, it's poor. It's just the poorest leadership. It's either a lack of experience or a lack of caring. I used to think it's poor lack of leadership. Now I think it's a lack of caring. I'm watching from a distance now, but go ahead.
Thank you for bringing up the lack of caring, because that segues into a point that you know, I really didn't want to have to make this. Can we get the camera right?
No.
But I wanted to make this point because it ties into some folks that, and I really got to say it. It's delicate. Of course, I don't want to say it, but I used to work with Alyssa Kenny-Geyers, or legislative intern, when she was a freshman. Of course, Neil was the CEO of Mercy Corps for many years, and of course, there's a lot of bad things about Mercy Corps going on to the news right now, and well, a lot of people said they're not caring. And Tanya Culver Humphrey, the woman who came forward and blew the whistle, Tanya said that they just didn't care what had happened to her. And I don't need to go into that too much. Tanya Culver Humphrey, her story is online. It's a very delicate story, and I can't even begin to speak on it.
Sure.
But I'll say about Mercy Corps is that they do have a bank and a Northwest Oregon chapter. It's called Mercy Corps Northwest. They help people all around the world, and they really need a PR win right now. A lot of people are very mad at them for some very bad things. But my thing is, okay, well, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in the higher power, whether it be Jesus Christ or Allah or whoever. I believe in forgiveness and doing the right thing. And my thing is, well, Mercy Corps has more money than God. Where's Mercy Corps at? Especially with Kanye.
Important.
Like, Kanye wants to be humanitarian. He said so on his interview with Charlemagne the God. So if Kanye wants to be humanitarian, maybe he should partner with the people who literally are the biggest humanitarians in the world, and do it right here in Oregon to help the people who we need to help in America first. You know, so maybe we should get Kanye and Mercy Corps together to talk about, well, let Kanye run that project and see what he could do with it as a humanitarian, and give him some resources, like people who are in the industry of humanitarian. But also, Mercy Corps Northwest works right here in the Northwest. They're already here. They're already established. They have tons of money. What do we have to lose, folks? Let's do something amazing. Let's think outside the box.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say is, good point is, Lightning. A guy named Lightning was at the county meeting last week, and he just said, hey, Miley Cyrus is waiting, and she's coming in on that wrecking ball. It's a reference to her song Wrecking Ball. And he's not wrong. Miley Cyrus is waiting with that wrecking ball. So we need to get Kanye up in here.
There's a difference in age right
help.
there.
Yeah,
A couple of years. 1 or 2 years is all.
Who is that?
so let's get Kanye in here with Mercy Corps to stop Miley Cyrus swinging in that wrecking ball. Let's stop and pause and think about, can we at least keep it open for 3 months to save the 100 lives that might die on the streets? Can
Yep,
we keep some beds open maybe?
Right.
Let's think different.
Yeah, I agree. And so back to your original question, Bruce, and that was a good, I think, segue, is to understand that's what I say. If the public would actually see Wapato, if they were to walk through, they'd be outraged by the fact of what a humane environment it is. I think they think it's some kind of a lockdown deal where people got whips and chains. It's not that at all. It's a very clean facility. It has ability to house people where they can sleep in sanitary conditions. And I got to tell you, that if I were going to try to get this homeless thing under control, that I would use the power of the county public health officer, who has enormous power in this county, enormous power in every county across the country, and to declare a public health emergency. And we would actually take people to have health assessments and use something like Wapato, not to lock them up or make them go away from what they want to do, but we'd have a health reason, and we do have a health crisis in this country, and and in this state. And back to your point, Oregon is a place small enough, big enough, small enough to actually have a footprint for a model program, as opposed to Los Angeles or San Francisco. We could actually do something here that we could model in the country, because we're small enough to do that here. We got less people in Oregon than in 2 blocks in San Francisco or in Los Angeles. Great idea.
So Bernie, why, from your experience, I'm a young guy, why don't we have those interesting conversations? What from your experience?
I think it's a lack of grown leadership. People come to position. This is how simple it gets. People come to position without paying any dues. So. Let me just tell you. So I started again with the Oregon State Police, but at night I did things like join the Citizen Sewer Advisory Committee in Gresham. I started paying my dues there. Then I went to the city council, and what I learned about leadership was it's grown, it's earned. It's not you're not born with it. Yeah, you're born with some aptitude for it, but you learn about people and how to lead them because they come along because you earn their trust, respect, whatever else it is, and then when you take the next step, and the next step, when you engage a mayor or something, they can actually talk about things from an experience that looks in a rearview mirror for experience, not to find an excuse not to do something.
That resume.
We're in good times in that the trades are coming back as a popular thing for schooling. You don't have to become a lawyer, doctor, etc. Get a 4-year degree. And so that brings into focus Wapato or any of these places where you do retraining and you get people to learn a new job or new skill. We've got plenty of job openings out there. We need to fill them.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the other thing too is that when you talked about the whole idea of where's the push to say, okay, fine, we don't need Wapato, and the word that comes out is always it's a jail.
Yeah.
No. In fact, it was even mentioned when we was down at Multnomah County. One of the guys, one of the staffers of Kafori was that. Something about Bob Wide. Remember that? Remember the one guy? Were you there standing up there behind me?
No.
The guy made the point about the fact that there's a lot of barbed wire. What are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about?
You have to go looking on the outside perimeter from a helicopter where there's some rolled wire clear up on the top of the facility. That's if you climb up on the roof and you have.
Well, then I got to tell you, then cut it off. The deal.
Yeah,
you remember that the community it was in on the design of this, and it was all the way from the 1% for arts. The community made a decision about what art they wanted in there.
Yes.
If you go ahead and look at the first elevator on the first floor, you'll see what I thought was a bunch of broken glass that people.
No, doesn't.
But it was an art piece. It was really nice, and it's an Indian theme. Wapato is a Native American theme.
Yes.
There. So you'll see the totem pole kind of things on Wapato. That was the community's design. Not the sheriff's design.
That's right.
I like the artwork broken glass because I think we're suffering from the broken windows policy.
We are.
I mean, what was it? You had the birds people.
Were they
They had all
trying to
kinds
tell
of
us
folks
something?
talking about the animals that are there and this, that, and the other. It's right on the river.
Well, Native American population actually, Wapato means potato.
Potato.
That's what it means. And
Careful now, I'm Irish, and that's a touchy subject.
well, the Native American population farmed there because it was a wetland, and so it was easy to grow that kind of thing. So I don't know how I'm off on that. Anyway, I'm off on that because we let the community down. We lied to them. Don't forget the rest of the taxpayers. We lied to the community. We told them what it was going to be, how it was going to facilitate, how they were going to be able to help the population there, and we did nothing with it.
Well, we're stuck with a bureaucracy that believes it's homes for the homeless. That's why they use homeless instead of addiction, instead of thief, all the other different things that we know, meth addicts. You go down the list. You don't put somebody into a house until you've help them with their problem
Right.
and get them re-educated and get them trained, and then you get them into housing. If people don't know it in Portland, which I think they don't, the Housing Authority of Portland, which they've changed the name, they love to change names for agencies, I guess, so we lose track of them. There's thousands of subsidized housing units in this city, especially. And so when I watch Steve Dean's interview there, and they're saying, "Oh, the people are living in their car because they have $2,000 a month coming in," well, you know, once you get into that system, you might only have to pay $70 or $150 a month for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. It's just how you progress through that system. I worked for the Housing Authority of Portland when I was a young man, and I was a union carpenter, and I watched how they spent money on that place. And you know, at any rate, the point is that there's plenty of housing. But there's no low-income housing. There's subsidized housing.
And see,
as a
there's no
realtor
such thing
for
as
40 years,
and the other thing
I
is
attest to that.
See, the other thing people don't understand.
Very
There's
good.
no such thing
Excellent.
as free housing.
No, there's no.
You know what I'm saying?
That's more
You
what it
got to
is.
pay your way. You understand? You got to pay your way. My point is that those developers are not talking about free housing, and then, like you said, that leadership is making that playing that game. That you know, it is, so to speak. So in the mindset is that anybody that's out there, oh, gee, let's come to Portland, Oregon. Here, you can get anything you want to get.
That's been a problem forever. Even when I was sheriff here, I'd run into young people on the street. I was in uniform walking like to the restitution center downtown Portland, and came across two young guys one day, and they said, "Hey, what? How come you have green on?" And I said, "Well, I said, so it's Multnomah County Sheriff's Office colors." I said, "Where are you guys from?" "Oh, we're from L.A." I said, "We just got into town." I said, "Well, how'd you get here?" They said, "Well, we had some money coming. So you gonna stay for a while?" "Oh, we're staying." I said, "You got a job?" "Not yet, but we're thinking about it." You know,
We're thinking about it.
So, but that's not really the point. Really is back to the leadership question.
Right.
You know, this is why you and you need to talk about different. Let's just talk about a different political structure here in Portland, where we have a city manager instead of a strong mayor form of government. Because until you take policy away from implementation, you're never going to get anywhere. There's just unless you're going to make qualifications where people have certain qualifications to be mayor, that's never going to happen here. So we need a professional to run the city. The policy's fine, but you know you got to have it buffered away from operations. That's just the way it is. City manager form of government. And again, the reason that becomes because then people have two levers in the city. When the mayor won't listen to them, they go to the city manager, and pretty soon the city manager's getting a lot of pressure. His staff's under a lot of pressure to do things like you're talking about in terms of how we address the people on the street. Because the mayor's it. You go to the mayor and he says no, it's no.
Well,
but we got 5 mayors now.
County commissioners have a lot of control over the purse strings too. So that's one of the reasons they're not funding Wapato, is that the Multnomah County Commissioner doesn't want to spend the money on it. But they got $100 million plus for low-income housing. It's like, you know, what do you use your money for? It's the public's money. We are being dictated how the money is going to be used. And here's a building they're more than willing to let just like you said, use a wrecking ball on. That just should be an outrage.
Now remember, we got a
community.
city auditor. That's their job.
Yeah.
Now, you should be able to pick up the phone and call up that city auditor.
Well, I think the city auditor is actually the last vestige we have about calling anybody out about anything, and same with the county, and same with the county auditor. Back to your point about the affordable housing thing, there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes people think ideas about housing come from the elected officials. That's not where it comes from. It comes from the money outside the elected officials. It comes from elected officials to get the money to build the places. So I haven't seen a good idea come out of that group anyway. But that's where it comes from. It comes outside. The money gets dropped inside in terms of political leverage, and then it goes back outside. And the guys that come up with the ideas and make the money on the outside.
Our leaders here, if there's a company out there called Blockable, without a C, and it's all geared for prefab, low-income housing. They've given up on Portland. They've given up on the state of Oregon. They're up in Seattle. They're down in San Francisco. They're at other communities and other political environments who actually are looking for low-cost housing. This was a company that Paul Allen eventually put $1 million behind, or whatever. This is just months before he died. But Stuart Emmons, in fact, was part of Blockable,
I know Stuart,
and everybody has given up on it. It's like I don't know if they're ever going to get off the ground. They were right here, just across the river in Vancouver. They could have been in Portland, and as far as I know, they're 3 years into not ever getting a product out.
Yeah, let me ask you about your generation. What do you expect? You want this because it's yours. It's not ours anymore.
That's right.
It's all yours.
Well, what about it, Pat? You've been telling me about it many times over every day.
You know, I got to say, it's pretty amazing, pretty awesome, and pretty humbling that I have somebody, a sheriff, who back in the day, before I went to military high school, before I got my act together, I wasn't Antifa or anything like that, but I was a skater punk. I was always intellectual, but like Joe Walsh said,
Yeah.
I like to
Joe.
make good trouble.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, right.
And so
That's right.
it's amazing to me that as a young guy, we're finally getting a seat at that table to really share. And it's not that we're telling, because we have stuff to learn. We don't know. We're learning from you guys. You guys have been there, done that. But we also have a vision
Right.
of like what people aren't seeing, of how we can, create a shared vision for the future. And the way I really look at it is, we have to look at creative ways to have, not only conversations, but courageous conversations. The
Right.
conversations that people don't want to have. Like,
Right.
what do we do about people who have drug addictions? Are we going to pretend like that doesn't exist? Are we going to put them on the news and pretend like it's not right there? Or are we going to have that real conversation? And really it comes down to this. My generation, we're very empathetic. I'm very empathetic. I try to see all different sides. But at the same time, you can't do that. Sometimes you got to keep it real and just say, no, this is what it is, and call a spade and
your eyes-
tackle the issue.
Your eyes are telling you what the real story is. That's what's going on. And it's just like the neighborhood. Even though we go and talk to the different homeless that show up there, I do not encourage our neighbors to go out and, because they want to go clean up stuff. I say, no, call the one point of contact, report the homeless, report the stuff. But there are needles in every one of those little areas. And the number varies, but, I've heard as many as 40 recently from just one little shopping cart area.
Well,
So-
Jordan shared that.
Yeah, he did too.
In
He
his
had a box of
presentation, had a
needles.
box
That's
of
true.
needles. And then when you think about that whole issue about the needle aspect of it, remember we had problems with the cans and the bottles.
Yeah, right.
We don't have problems with the cans and the bottles.
Let's do a needle bill.
That's
We had
what
a
I'm
bottle
saying.
bill. Let's do a needle bill.
Let's have a needle bill.
Let's
That's like that.
incentivize people helping clean up the community.
That's not a bad idea.
And the facility is already there.
Yeah.
You just give them a box and just say 50 cents a needle.
Yeah.
No problem. They get picked up.
Yeah,
Or
that-
better yet, then the next step is no more needles.
Well,
you go to
might be
cuckoo's
encouraging
nest.
them to use those
No,
needles.
no. See, the
Send them
point.
50 cents
I'm
for-
going somewhere with it. My point is
All
that
right.
you start at one point, but ultimately, from my standpoint, you don't give them needles if it's a problem. You go to the old cuckoo's nest. Who was that? Remember that? What was that movie?
Yeah,
So that-
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, whatever. But
One
bottom
flew
line,
over the cuckoo's nest.
they gave them the pill, but you had to swallow it there at the window.
Right, exactly.
Because otherwise, if you give them the pills, they're going to sell them.
Right. But back to your point about tough conversations,
Yes.
and that's what we're not having. And see, and what has happened to people's, the lack of political leadership experience that I was fortunate enough to grow, is that when you have it, you find courage because you have a better sense of what it is the community wants as opposed to what you're afraid to say to them. Now, you're going to have a few loud voices here and there, but those loud voices need to sit down and just be quiet for a few minutes and be told so, because I've got another population to serve. The best example is to watch somebody who comes into office, I'm not going to use a name, who was a kind of a golden person at the Portland City Council, lasted 2 years and got his head knocked off by somebody who had no experience. You know why? Because he never grew any experience along the way. You got to be on the sewer committee.
Yep,
You got to be on the
yep,
library
yep,
board.
yep,
You got to be a head of a neighborhood. Because pretty soon, the courage you get to be a leader and to take positions that in the short term are hard, that do sink in with people. And that's why I'm asking you about your generation. And what you just said is exactly true. It's an empathetic generation that sees things a whole lot differently than some of us Semper Fi guys here that came with a pretty conservative point of view about, because we said so. Because when I grew up in law enforcement and with corrections folks, I learned that because I said so meant nothing to them. They wanted to know why not, why can't we? And those are things, when I grew up in law enforcement, you didn't need to know any of those questions because nobody cared what you thought. But that's not where we are now. And that's why this community conversation has to get very tough. Go ahead.
And thank you for mentioning that, because I got a bombshell that we have a sheriff, a former city councilor, former police chief. This man right here has loads of experience. And the question I have to ask is, Jeremy Christian, what happened there?
Yeah.
I've worked in politics, and I told a lot of these leaders who I used to work with, I'm committing political suicide by doing this, but I think I'm going to go to that Joey Gibson rally because I hear there's a white supremacist marching in our neighborhood. You know, I was student body president at PCC Southeast Campus. If there's some white supremacists walking through well, hey, what's up? I'm going to have a polite hello, what's going on here? I'm going to put my finger on the pulse, shake your hand at least, and say, okay, what do you really want? What's going on here while you're doing this? And I called some people who all remain unnamed today, some very high profile leaders, and I said, hey, you know, people marching in our area, would you like to at least figure out what's going on? Those leaders said no, and they banged the drum about white supremacists, trying to slander a bunch of people who I come to find out were not white supremacists, actually Japanese people. But again, it's all political correctness. People are not willing to stand up and look at the facts or facts. Yeah. And I want to ask the question is, when I called the police, why is it that they stood down? And I hypothesized on Lars Larson and some other people's shows that I thought it must have been some kind of stand downs because, you know, the mayor is also the police commissioner, which needs to change.
Right.
We need a city manager's position of governance because why do we have a mayor that's also a police commissioner? That's a little scary. That means if I got an opponent I don't like, I'm going to send the police after them. That's like wild, wild west dangerous. We need to break away from that government model. We need to work with the Portland City Club to help them change that government model.
That's right.
Regionally elected people. Because, you know, it comes back down to the most racist terrorist attack in recent history. That gentleman, Jeremy Christian, threatened me just for speaking prison reform and solidarity at that march I'm speaking of. And then he threatened me on Facebook very explicitly. And I know people on the streets. I'm from Felony Flats. I know there's a lot of gentle, nice people with some disabilities.
That's right.
But then I know there's the ones who you don't turn your back on. And I knew Christian was going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And I called the police. I said, it doesn't matter who I am. Should not matter. No arrogance here. But I'm going to be reporting this to the political people who I'm in contact with if you don't arrest this gentleman. There is a laundry list of, you know, things he's done. And, well, I'll just say Micah Fletcher, the lone survivor of the stabbing, was on Bruce's show. And he said point blank, you know, he's a bouncer downtown. So they knew Jeremy Christian. The police knew Jeremy Christian. And Micah said there's a video somewhere, security camera, showing Jeremy Christian stabbing someone in the shoulder. Attempted murder. But the police wouldn't do anything because the victim didn't report it. Excuse me, there's still a video of a gentleman walking around our town stabbing people. And
you don't need a victim, by the way. Anyway.
And so that's what's really sad is, going back to your point on all the lack of leadership is, I don't know, you know, but my question is, what happened with that? And I think it really comes down to Ted Wheeler dropped the ball, and to this day, it's been covered up. Many people are involved in the cover-up. And I've been organizing a lot of young people around this. I've got the Patriots and Antifa, the people who are fighting in the streets like the Civil War. I got them together saying, you know what, we should hold the mayor accountable. I've got them together on a political gang truce right here on Bruce Broussard's show to talk about how we come together, and nobody else in America can figure out how we get Antifa and the Patriots to chill out. But I've done it. So my question is, why is it that we continue to pretend like a racist terrorist attack didn't happen? Why is it that Mayor Wheeler still will not address that? And my question is, you're a law enforcement guy. I personally believe if Wapato would have been open as not, again, a jail, but a facility that's kind of, you know, mental health services, also job training. How do we help people empathetically deal with the problems and re-enter society? I think if Jeremy Christian would have had a bunk there, or if James Chastity Jr. would have had a bunk there, maybe people wouldn't have got murdered. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. So it's a multi-layered problem. We beat the leadership stuff to death, so I'll try a little different angle on it. So back to the issue of the things that drive a problem in our communities. Jeremy Christian was a bigger problem in the jails almost than he was in the streets. So he assaulted a number of deputies in jail. You know, when he was in jail for this last go around, they had another situation and. With him, and he is an unfixable individual. But here's the issue that needs to change in the state of Oregon and across the country. When we talk about mental health issues, what we really are failing is in the administrative part of mental health. That is that we arrest somebody who's mentally ill. They come to jail. 2 days later, they're medicated. They show up in court. The judge, who is bound by what he sees, not what he hears, says, I don't see a problem. Interviews the person, says, No, I don't think we're going to be able to commit him civilly. We've got to change the civil commitment laws. This guy needs to be civilly committed and treated over time. If Wapato had been used correctly, and even transitioned, forget it. Don't call it a jail. Just call it Wapato Community Facility. I don't care what you call it. So we get
rehabilitation
center. Yeah. So instead of arresting a guy and releasing him that night, he gets to be held, and then the court says we're going to do some transition services for you over here. While you're waiting. The problem is we're creating a generation of criminals because they can't afford $500 bail or $1,000 bail or $5,000. And those people are the ones that need to be able to get back out, get back to their jobs, don't lose their families, and that kind of thing.
That's an interesting point.
We're losing people over things like that. So Jeremy Christian is an example of a total system failure, start to finish. We could start with the cops, but that's really where it ends, because here's where it happens.
Their hands are tied.
When there's no strength and leadership at the top, they're afraid. You're going to find a city paralyzed, cops paralyzed to do anything. It's Portland better know that they're in big trouble with the quality of policing they're going to get in this city. There are no more qualified candidates. They can't even. There are 120 vacancies in the city now, and no qualified candidates. When I started with the state police, I applied with Portland, and I didn't ever test with them. But there was 5,000 people coming to the test on a Saturday. They're not 500 coming. They're not 50 coming, and they're not starting to make excuses for the kind of people they're hiring.
Well, with the leadership we got, we're not going to replace those police
That's
officers
correct.
either. We're going to have to bring up the mental health industries and all of these other services that are lacking, and that's the only way to kind of cushion the loss of the police officers. I've never met a police officer in all the meetings that I've gone to at PSAC, Public Safety Action Committee meetings, that I didn't like. These are highly qualified people.
Highly qualified. And I don't want to take people to jail. Just give me a different option.
Yeah.
But when you, let me tell you.
You limit their options, and you have a different police force.
Yeah, so when I was in Gresham, quick story. The fact is, we had one day Portland Police. Our borders came together in Southeast. It was on Stark Street, but a Portland police officer tried to pick up a mentally ill woman on the street, and he tried to interview her, but he could not find any. She could not be coherent about anything. Well, we can't take people to jail because they're not coherent. They have to have committed a crime. They have to be on arrest. So we finally ended up releasing her in a parking lot. 5 hours later, she stepped off a curb and got killed in the city of Gresham. Now, this is the kind of services we have for the people who are mentally ill. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
This reminds me of the Joker movie that just came out, of how the system is so broken that people who need a little help, who are not committing crimes, they get abused by people on the streets. They get robbed, they get killed, they get stabbed, they get attacked, just like the Joker movie. I'm not giving spoilers, but it's so amazing that you made that point. The system hardens the people that need a little bit of help.
That's right.
When you let masked people come and demonstrate, you got a problem right now.
Right, that's correct.
And that's just so simple to see. That's my whole point in this. Our eyes are not deceiving us. I think our leaders are.
Okay. At this point, let me add to, again, the public who's looking at what we're doing here now. They're talking. They've got a lot of things on their minds. And they made a lot of sense, if you will, folks. So what's lacking? In fact, the word that comes out as I've listened to the whole concept is the lack of leadership.
Yep.
We need leadership. So where do we start? It's right at the top.
Right here.
Look at that.
Starts right at this table.
That's why he's here.
That's
why he's here.
These young guys like this, one day there'll be an issue that I can tell you, it doesn't matter anymore. What tipped me over to get involved in running for office, and that kind of thing. But one day it'll be that one issue, and you will grab hold. We need you to grab hold sooner or later, and take a generation, because our day is come and gone for the most part. We're here to support you, not you to support us anymore.
Well, I need the help of people who, I need Kanye West. Where you at, brother? Let's do this. I'm serious. Where is Kanye? And another thing, we have Nike right back in our backyard here in Oregon. Nike's world headquarters is right here, stone's throw away from Portland in Beaverton, Oregon. And I'm hearing a lot about Colin Kaepernick. I love what Colin's doing on prison reform. I'm an advocate. I have been for many years on prison. I was a skater punk in Felony Flats. I used to run from the cops before I got my act together. So I get what you're saying, Colin. But Jay-Z is one of the biggest rappers of all time. He's married to Beyonce, and he's involved high level with the NFL. He's a billionaire. Now, I thought for a long time, I've worked on prison reform. It's really bad taste and bad optics for you to piss people, excuse my language, but to irritate people, to blank people off. Why would you want to anger people and disrespect military families, regardless if that's your goal? If you're You know, the optics were bad when Colin started kneeling. There were so many other ways that I believe he could have actually had the conversation. I actually convinced conservatives in the legislature to vote on prison reform and to come to my side when no other progressive was able to do it. Well, how did I do that? Well, I didn't pick issues to piss them off with.
Right,
You know,
that's right.
I said, hey, did you think about it this way? So my challenge really is, thank you for that humbling praise, but I'm just one guy. I'm just a young guy seeing what's out there. I'm reading the tea leaves politically, but I'm hearing that Kaepernick wants to talk about prison reform, but he's not doing anything really. And Jay-Z, one of the biggest rappers of all time, he was on TMZ. He got called out. Jay-Z called out Colin Kaepernick and said, dude, we're done with you. You're not doing anything. We want to move on. We know what the kneeling's for. Now let's actually get into
Right.
solution mode.
Right.
So my challenge is, I would like Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, and people who are talking about it but not being about it, like Colin Kaepernick and Nike, where are you guys?
Okay, good point. Look, we got about a minute. This has been great, guys. Trust me, it's been great.
thank
And
you.
I hope the viewing audience, you've enjoyed this. As you can see, there's a lot more that could be said.
Yeah,
There's a lot more.
sure.
Have some discussions with your neighbors. But this time around, make sure you know who in the hell you're voting for this time around.
Yeah, because you just said you're one guy. It's one mayor, one governor.
That's right.
One city
That's
councilor.
right.
That's
That's
all
right.
it takes. That's
That's
all
right.
it takes.
One
One
leader.
strong
That's right.
voice that can actually bridge gaps,
That's
not
right.
create
That's
gaps,
right.
and
That's
push them
right.
further apart.
So-
And I see those qualities in you, so I expect to see
right.
that
That's
name
right.
out there.
That's why.
Oh,
He's,
yes.
that's,
Oh,
why
yes.
that's why he's sitting at the table.
That's correct.
He
Says a lot
still-
that he's here.
He's in boot camp right now.
Yeah,
he's
that's-
doing good now. He's going to graduate.
Yeah, I know
with
he
honors. He's gonna
just taught
graduate
me
with honors.
something. I'm gonna take notes.
There you go. I appreciate that, man. Well, look here, folks. This has been great, and hopefully you'll, like I said before, look at what's going on.
you,
Look at the
Bernie.
leadership
Thank you.
aspect of it.
Yeah,
we
thank
want to
you.
appreciate that all these guys.
Thanks, guy.
come
I
in.
really do.
And again, thank you,
Hope
guys.
you'll take
It's a
hold.
pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'll see
Bruce,
you guys
always.
back.
Don't forget
Always.
the veterans.
Good. I
We'll do it
appreciate
again,
bud.
right.
You got that
Veterans on
hundred-
the
you got that
street.
150,000 yet? Did you pick
Yeah.
up that money for the?
We're trying to
Cooperative?
get money for
But you're working on
just
it.
the 3 months.
You're
That's
working
right.
on it. Okay,
Got
good.
10
Well, that's
people.
it, folks. Well, look, have a good one, and thank you very much for being with us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
We're gonna have another good one.
We're up to
Awesome.
millions. But.
Okay.
Yep.
So Columbia
just keep
Sportswear
talking.
is right next door.
Huh?
Columbia Sportswear
Right.
is right next door.
Right.
to Wapato. I try to get a hold of